watching us again at Norfolk Public Access. This is State and Local. I'm Anne Marie Battistone. Now, before I speak with my guest, Gerry Amand, who's running for moderator, I just want to mention that everybody is invited to come on if they wish to do an interview. All the candidates, I believe I've called everybody. So we'll be, hopefully we'll be seeing the other two candidates for moderator as well as the candidates for the other offices as well. So I just wanted to mention that. And as I said, my guest is Gerry Amand. Thank you so much for coming on.
Nice to have me.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Now, you have, what sort of service have you given to the town already? You've been quite active in town down the years, have you not?
Well, if we're talking government service, yes. I was on the Zoning Board of Appeals back it was back in like in the 80s, early 80s.
When did you first come to Norfolk?
I moved to Norfolk in 1978.
Wow.
And I became involved almost immediately. But I did the Zoning Board of Appeals. I was elected to the Board of Health, and I spent 4 terms on the Board of Selectmen. I've been on the advisory board. So I have a varied, there's a number of study committees and things. And now I'm on the Board of Registrars, which is for voter registration, the census. And
now, you were talking before the show that should you be elected, you would have to give that up.
Yeah, being on the Board of Registrars, if you do anything else, appointed or elected, you have to resign from the Board of Registrars.
Now why is that?
I have no idea.
Some sort of conflict of interest, or?
Well, with the elections, yeah, I guess the state law requires that I not be a member of that board and anything else.
Because I know I used to see you at the end of the polling day. Now, yes. What were you doing at that point? I know you come in with your laptop, and I was.
Well, I'm sorry, I shouldn't interrupt you. At that point, I was doing the tallying of the votes. I did that for a number of the town clerks, Alice, Marie.
Alice, oh my God. I remember Alice. My goodness.
And also Gail.
Boy, back in those days, they hardly even put up a sign to tell you where to vote. Yeah. Because I remember I moved here in '95, and it was so different from Medfield, and I knew what day it was, and I'm looking around for signs. I thought, my goodness, I guess if you don't know where to go, you don't belong here. But
well, isn't that the Boston way?
But now, if those ballots already went into the machine, why did you need to then? Was that like a double check?
No. The ballots were counted by the machine, except for the ones that the machine spits out, of course, and the write-ins. So there were usually hand counters who counted the ballots that the machine couldn't read. A lot of those, the machines can't read blue. Mm-hmm. So if somebody took an absentee ballot and used a blue pen, no matter how dark that looks, the machine can't see it.
Oh, all right.
So, but that counts. So what I would do as a tallier is take all the counts that came out of the machines and then the hand counts, and then come up with the actual end count for the town for the elections.
Oh, all right. Now, what is your background? Where are you from? New England? Where'd you go to college? What work have you? Are you retired now?
I'm retired now, but I was born and raised in Acushnet.
Oh yeah.
Down near New Bedford.
Right.
I actually went to New Bedford High School because Acushnet doesn't have a high school, believe it or not. And then I went to which is now UMass Dartmouth. I graduated from there in 1970 as an electrical engineer.
Oh, now, and did you work were you doing software or hardware or what?
I did mostly systems engineering, which is more of developing the requirements and interfaces and how things work together and things like that. So I look at more at things from a systemic point of view than in an actual detailed design.
Mm-hmm. Now, why did you think you would like to become moderator?
Well, actually, I'm not sure why I'd like to become moderator, but it's a job that I always thought I'd like to do someday. And someday Frank was always there.
Right.
Oh yeah. When I was, and then when I got I decided it was time to take a break. That's when Frank kind of like left, and
Right.
that was not the right time. Now is a better time. CC has decided not to run,
Right.
so it's really an open
Yes, it is, yes.
position, and I just thought it was time to get back involved. The Board of Registrars is not really a real big involvement in anything, so in fact, no one even knows I'm there.
Now, Chris, of course, you served those 4 terms as selectman, so you know you're very familiar with the rules of war. What's that? Robert's rules, and there's a parliamentary procedure. Is that the same thing, or is it a variation?
They're close.
They're close. Now, but I wonder if, as a moderator, one has to sometimes make a judgment as to something that doesn't fit in the parameters of those rules. Would that be sort of like people being out of order, and how do you foresee maybe dealing with something like that?
I don't think dealing with that is all that difficult. Sometimes there are amendments made on the floor or things brought up that are not in keeping with the bounds of the article itself. Usually things can't go too far out of the bounds. Like if there's a motion to fund something to buy books for a school or a library, it can't all of a sudden have a truck for the highway department added to that article. It's specific, if it was specific to those things. So those kind of things are the kind of things you can rule those out of order. But that doesn't happen all that very often.
Well, I mean, of course, I think the problem I think the problem with town meeting is how few people go. And would you have in mind a way to maybe try to encourage attendance at that, or do you feel that that's not really the role of the moderator?
Well, I think the moderator influences how many people show up. I think
that's interesting.
And I think in that way, you can influence it. But I mean, other than going out in the street and trying to drag people into town to a town meeting, I don't know. I mean, I saw spaghetti dinners. I don't know that helped and things like that. So I think it's got more to do with conducting the meeting in a manner that people are comfortable and feel that they're being heard, and after that, people will come. But quite frankly, after having been very, very involved in town government, I probably know as much about town government as anybody who's not in town government at this time. It's interesting how complex it is. I probably didn't realize that when I was so involved, but as I become more and more removed, things are very, very complex.
Oh, I agree.
And I think that's some of the reasons that people don't come. And what I hope to do is maybe encourage and get things so that they're a little more
Interesting?
we know what we're talking about. People know what's being done instead of it being some kind of a great mystery. The budget, for instance, is a great mystery on how that's put together, but it takes forever. It takes a long, long time to do that. It takes months to put the budget together and then to come in with a recommendation. As a voter, when you walk in there, you have no idea how that was.
I mean, it isn't an easy thing to. I mean, if I didn't have, I'll tell you the truth, if I didn't have my knitting, because I find it to be very, and it's kind of over my head. I find it to be, I mean, there's and I don't really approve of. I guess you have to get a hold of Marion now to get them to send it to your house, the warrant articles.
Yeah, well,
And I wish they hadn't stopped, because I know the last time that they did not send them to the house. They had them there at the meeting, and I think it's really important to go through those so that you have some idea of what's going on. But you're right, for the average person in town, it's pretty arcane, a lot of it.
yes, it is, and they're not giving you information. They don't pass the information out as freely as it used to be. It is all available. It is all available. It's just it's not brought to everyone's home like it had been
I assume that was because of the
25,
cost,
30
I
years.
assume.
Yeah, it's a cost issue.
Well, they used to send it to the house right pretty much up until a few years ago, didn't they?
Yes.
Because I remember a couple of times I think that Frank had to put people out. I assume that you've attended most of the town meetings. Do you recall any instances of that, or was that something that you think would be a tough?
I don't believe I've ever seen Frank put somebody out of the meeting. I think I'm the only person that he ever ruled out of order. But I don't remember why.
Maybe Frank told a story of one time when he had to
Yes,
put
he-
somebody out. It was
yes,
a
he
story
does.
that he's often, and I don't remember how it goes. It was very funny, and it was, somebody sort of answered him back, and
Yes,
But he ruled you out?
yes, I do know, and I know who that is. Yes, and he.
is this person still around?
I don't believe he lives in town any longer, but I don't think that's happened very often. I think people act civil and generally, and if they get out of line, if you just remind them that they need to maintain a certain decorum, I think they come back.
Now, you've blocked out what happened when he ruled you out of order.
I don't even remember what it was.
Oh my God.
I don't even remember what it was.
Now, you were talking before about that you think that the moderator would maybe be a little bit of maybe draw is the wrong word, but a little bit of a draw for people, coming to town meeting. What do you think it would be about a moderator that would? Do you think some of it has to do with moving things along, or do you think there'd be some levity? Because I know, you have if I may say so, you have a bit of a reputation for being a kind of a humorist.
I have.
Well, that's what
I'm an engineer. How could I be possibly having you? Like I said, I think just conducting the meeting properly with decorum and let everyone feeling like they have their say. I think it doesn't necessarily attract people so much as it doesn't chase away the ones that you do have there.
Right.
And that would be my goal. The other goal is to like I said, to try to make it a little more understandable, so that people know what they're voting for, as opposed to, because sometimes you sit there and you see, boy, there's a lot of confusion. People they don't know whether to vote yes or no.
Was there some kind of an issue about the microphones that, I don't know, I thought I had heard there was some kind of I don't know how to say, a debate about how those microphones would be set up as far as, the order of the microphones going back and forth as far as yes and no and people coming up to speak. Have you heard anything about that, or do you know anything about, has it always been pretty much set up the same way?
No, that's a relatively new feature, the yes and no mics. I'm not sure that adds much.
Because otherwise, how else would people be able to speak? I mean, so you think in the past there was no yes or no mic? There was no people?
Oh, I know there wasn't.
Oh, people did not line up to speak?
No.
So they had no opportunity to?
No, people could speak. Everyone could speak.
But they would just raise their hand and speak from their seat?
Well, you were asked to walk to the mic after you were recognized. I mean, the mic is more I think, for cable TV than it is for the town meeting. If I speak in the town meeting, I don't think there's anyone in the town meeting that can't hear me.
Uh-huh.
That's not true for other people.
Right.
I have a voice that'll project, but others don't necessarily have. Some need the assistance of.
So the yes and no mic allowed there to be two lines of two groups of people getting up and waiting to speak, rather than people just getting up pro, then getting up con at the same mic.
Yes. Yeah.
Well, we're just going to take a short break. It's going to take a short break, and we'll be back in a few minutes, and my guest is Gerry Amand, who's running for moderator. Welcome back to State and Local. Gerry Santamand and I are going to continue talking about those pesky microphones at the town meeting. Now, you had some other thoughts about setting up. Was it the setting up of the mics, or the way they're used, or the way they're integrated, or what were you were starting to tell me something during the break?
Well, I'm not sure whether the yes and no mics are necessary exactly the way they're implemented at this point. But one of the concerns I have in watching the way town meeting has been going is that people have to go to the mic, and I believe that that's not completely sensitive to the ADA requirements.
Oh, for goodness sake!
You know,
Gee, I never even thought of that.
because if someone is unable, I don't know if we had any accommodations or anything, but I think that has to be looked at somewhat in terms of compliance with the Americans with Disability Act.
So somebody would have to just take the mic and walk, have
Well,
a long
either that-
enough cord and walk up to wherever this person was.
Either that, or we have to have some spot that's near the microphones that are that one would say is a handicapped area, or someone who has limited mobility.
Now, just this is kind of a stupid question, but exactly how does that setup work? So the mics are there, and then people just go back and forth, and people just say their piece, and that's the end of it.
I'm not sure I understand the
Well,
question. but
in other words, the warrant, the article is under discussion, and people just line up, and then they go back and forth between the two mics.
Mm-hmm.
How do they determine whether the no starts or the yes starts?
I don't know. I guess it's up to the moderator.
You know, because that's sort of, I don't know, I think as people listen to an argument, I think the order of points kind of can make a difference. The way people then subsequently perceive each point. Because that's also the other point, is that people really actually are kind of going, do people sometimes go back and forth and respond to each other on those yes and no mics? Do you understand what I'm?
That's really not encouraged in a town meeting where you respond to each other. It's not supposed to be specifically a debate.
Yeah.
Even though one might like to think it's a debate, but it's more,
So
if you
would that
remember, everyone is usually reminded to address the moderator.
Right.
And that takes out the personal thing, and that takes away sometimes the things that causes friction and discontent inside of a meeting.
But suppose a point is raised on one side, and this then changes the picture for the person on the opposite side of the issue. I would imagine then they would then address their comment based on what this new point that was made. I mean, that must happen.
Certainly.
As well.
Certainly.
Now, what are the other duties of the moderator, as far as you know? Is there anybody that they appoint? They have to appoint a deputy moderator.
There's a deputy moderator. That's in the town bylaws. That's in the event that the moderator is unable to be there or wants to speak.
Or has to recuse themselves.
Yes. The other is, I think the more important appointments are the advisory board, I believe, because it's my opinion that the advisory board should be representative of the community as a whole, and not slanted towards one way of thinking to another. It should be more representative of the entire community, so that any article that's brought to them for their recommendation, by the time it's done, all the questions have been asked. So
Right,
that
from different perspectives.
from the different perspectives. I find that's the best way to vet something out and make sure that it's actually where we should go, is when it's really, really discussed. And that's the only thing I think it's important to try to make sure that an advisory board has balance on it and is representative of the community, and no one mindset.
Now, would the present advisory board stay, or is it then up for a big change with the new moderator?
No, the advisory board, I believe, is appointed for I believe members are appointed for 3 years.
Oh, all right.
And they're staggered. I don't believe everybody goes at the same time. So there would be members whose term don't even expire at this time. They only
And the moderator goes up for a re-election every year.
every year.
So actually, you could have a situation where any moderator might find that their board is maybe not to their liking, but there's really nothing that they can do about it until an opening comes up.
I don't think it's important that it's to the moderator's liking.
Well, you were talking about it in terms of being, I meant to say in terms of being balanced.
I think, to my mind, I think that it should be balanced so that there is a good discussion of articles and looked at from, it has a broad base from the community of support, not just one mindset.
You know, I was on that for a couple of years, and I'm telling you, that is a difficult job. I mean, talk about above your pay grade. I mean, it was way over my head, I have to say. And the amount of knowledge that people had just to understand the ins and outs of the finances and the different accounts and it was. I mean, I was really impressed at the amount of work they put into it. It was. I didn't stay on because it was really. I just didn't know enough to contribute to it. But I mean, it's whoever's on that board is really. You have to really give them some credit because it's not a simple thing. Now,
I spent 2 years on that board, and
did you find that to be that daunting as I did, or obviously not?
No, because I had 2 terms on the Board of Selectmen, and that's when I did 2, and then I went back on the Board of Selectmen for 2 more terms. I didn't do the whole 4, but my 2 years, so I probably cheated. I had more knowledge probably than someone else who just comes in cold.
Oh, right.
Because I did have some background, but while it is. Your opinion would have been very valuable to it in terms of what's important, because what you think is important is the priorities that you're establishing for the community. And it turns out that the budget is probably the place that you can establish the biggest amount of priority. Is the money go to the police department, and then in there, what is it we need? Do we really want to add an officer or whatever, or do we want to add a teacher? And it comes down to where is the priority for the community? And that's why I think you need a broad base on the advisory board, because some of this is the discussion that has to take place. Is we have these things. The counting of the dollars, we have people who can do the absolute, this is where it has to come from, that's where it has to come from. You're short $10,000. Where do you want it to come from? That would be where you would come in, is where do it come from? We have the professionals. We have the Jack Hathaways and the finance persons and people and the town accountant. They can do the number crunch, the absolute number crunching, but they can't come up where the community thinks it wants to go and what it finds to be the most important in its priorities. That's why the advisory board needs people. They don't need people who are all financial wizards.
Right, yeah. Now, what other involvement have you had in the town in your time that you've lived here? What else have you been involved in? You have a pin there. What is that pin? It's very shiny and.
It's a nice, pretty pin. Yeah,
it is.
It's my Lions pin. I've been a member of the Lions Club in town 33 years.
Oh my goodness.
And I'm currently only on the board of directors, but in the past I've had most of the seats, including the president, and they made me be president one year. So.
Is that an elected?
That's
is it elected among the?
Yes. Yeah. When it's your turn, you get elected. Yes. No, actually. That's not necessarily true. That would degrade a lot of really good men and women who have done that job.
Now, what do they do in town? I know that the town day, and then the trees, the Christmas trees.
Well,
And what else?
we we just got done doing the Chili Fest
Oh,
last
right.
week, which most of the proceeds went to the food bank
Where was that held? At
St. Jude's.
And was it well attended?
Yes. Yes,
And people came in from the different restaurants?
we had 6 different restaurants. Yeah.
Oh. Now, what is their big sort of interest? Is it something to do with vision or with?
Most of ours is eye research. What we look at is mostly eye research. So we donate a lot of money to the mass eye research, and actually to diabetes and hearing dogs, and seeing eye dogs, excuse me. Because diabetes is the #1 cause of blindness. So
Is it? Oh, well, I guess yes. I suppose now these days, yes, it would be
and
as opposed to.
based on that, that's why diabetes is also one of the priorities. But we also contribute a lot of money into the local charities and things in town, and we support those who might need it. So on occasion that they go unnamed.
You know, I do have another question about a town meeting, and just from your times when you've attended, the whole business of moving along. Where do you think where do you think the moderator comes in terms of? Are there times when discussion has to be suspended? Is that that's strictly a judgment call, isn't it?
I think.
Or is it not?
Yeah, I think when there comes a time when there's nothing more to be said about something, that possibly people should be encouraged not to talk anymore.
But
Not
that must be
necessarily shut off, but encouraged. If I've seen other moderators do that. It's if you have anything new to add, please get up. Speak.
But still, there must come a point where there are people that still may want to say something, and the moderator has to.
I don't have any problem with letting them talk.
Yeah. Oh, with letting. Yeah. Because I know there's also this issue about the 2 nights.
Well, but you can. There's also the when debate is over, it's over, and you can. If people don't want to stop, there's always the motion to cut off debate.
That somebody makes from the floor.
Right.
Well, so now the election is May 6th.
May 6th.
And so then that following, were you to be elected, then you'd have that week to get yourself ready and read all the articles and meet with everybody, and then in a week you'll be on the stage.
Actually, it's very interesting, but the bylaws require the moderator to start 1 week before that.
Before the
election.
Before the election?
Yeah, it's interesting.
So
It's
how's
an
that
interesting dichotomy in the problem in the bylaws.
So how's that going to work?
I don't know.
Well, they can't if they haven't been elected.
Correct. But that's interesting, because 2 weeks before he's supposed to conduct a meeting with all the board of selectmen and the advisory board and the town clerk.
So what will happen this time? Will
I
Cece do it?
assume Cece would do that.
Oh, I
yeah.
see. All right, and then you'd give you the notes, or whomever.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for coming on. I hope you enjoyed being on the show.
I've thoroughly enjoyed being
Oh, that's
here
good.
with you.
Thank you so much for coming, and
Thank
best
you,
of
Ann.
luck. Good luck.
Thank you.
And thank you for watching State and Local. And we'll be back with more interviews in the coming week. Thank you for watching. You've been watching Norfolk Public Access. I'm Ann Marie Battistone.